And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
Go ahead and say it, Ed. Go Tigers!
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
You like that? You like that?
F it. Jamar's down there somewhere.
The New Orleans Saints select Marcus Davenport.
No!
Splash Brothers? Yeah.
It's playoff. Keep going, Brace.
The playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
High school football. That's correct. High school football is getting underway as the Bayou Jam starts tonight. And Clay went and watched several of the games at West Monroe Rebel Stadium as Bayou Jam got underway. So I hope they're enjoying the night off and enjoying a little bit of time before football season gets underway. We're going to miss them, but we're going to keep rolling on, and we'll have them back next week. And I'm going to kind of do a little prelude into what we're going to get into next week. But first, we're going to open it up, as we always do, with a word of prayer. Lord, thank you for everything that you do for us every day, and thank you for giving us all the opportunities and just allowing us to shine a light for you, Lord, and giving us this great hobby of football that we really enjoy and be able to fellowship in this sport. And fantasy football is a lot of us enjoy it and like to talk about it and spend time with our buddies doing it and running leagues and our families. And we just, none of it would be possible without you and sending your son to die on the cross for us, Lord. And we just praise your name and just try to be a light for you, Lord. And thank you for everything you continue to do and bless us with. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. Now, rolling on in this pod, we're going to cover some of the latest news and injury updates. Not a ton of news that's outside injury updates at this time. What little bit there is, I will cover as I talk about those players, because most of them are either sitting out or something going on with them. But also, I want to say congratulations to my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, Alex and Kayla Videz, as they brought into the world their precious little baby girl, Chandler Marie Videz, on 8/20/23 this past weekend. Congratulations to y'all, and I just want to give y'all a shout out. And then nextly, we're going to go ahead and roll on into thanking our sponsors, and that's Big Reed BBQ, Automotive Detailing Solutions, This Little Piggy Barbecue Food Truck, and Mimi's Children's Boutique. Thank y'all for stepping up and supporting our podcasts, and we're not going to forget about you. We're going to mention you on every podcast. But the highlighted sponsor of this pod is going to be This Little Piggy Food Truck, based out of Jonesboro. That brings the best barbecue around to the people. You can find This Little Piggy and owner Kyle Terrell set up at events and festivals all around Jackson Parish and surrounding areas. To keep track of when you can get your hands on some amazing brisket and pulled pork, follow This Little Piggy Food Truck on Facebook. And I have not got a chance to test it out, Kyle, but I promise I'm going to get on there. I'm going to track you down whenever I come back home to Jackson Parish. I'm going to track you down, and I'm going to get my hands on some of that brisket and pulled pork. I'm a big fan of both, and I've heard nothing but great things about it, and we appreciate you supporting the pod. All right, now coming up, something I just said we're going to talk a little bit about in the upcoming pods. I just wanted to kind of preview those a little bit. So before the season gets underway next week, Josh and Clay are both going to be back. Probably the first pod that's going to come out next week is going to be a rankings movers pod. We're just going to talk about some of the big players that have moved up or down the rankings the most, and some that could be the most impactful for your fantasy leagues, that we think could be the most impactful as you're getting ready for your drafts coming up. Hopefully a lot of y'all push your drafts back like we recommended. Obviously, it's not always possible, but logistically, but it's always best case if you can push it back closest to Labor Day as possible. And then on the second pod, I'm going to do something we've never done before. A lot of people really seem to enjoy it when other podcasts do it, but we're going to do a 10-team PPR mock draft live on the pod. So we're going to record a podcast, and we're going to set up a 10-team PPR. We're going to try to have as many actual live people drafting with us on the show. They're not all going to be mic'd up. It's probably just going to be me, Clay, and Josh that'll be mic'd up discussing the picks, talking about our picks and kind of going through the players and all that as the draft goes. But they will be actual fantasy people that several of us have played fantasy football with over the years, drafting live with us. And we'll give them some shout outs. A lot of those guys are guys that we talk fantasy with pretty much 24/7. And I really hope a majority of them can join us because that's going to be a lot of fun. And that's going to be the second pod next week. And that's pretty much all that we got planned out so far. Obviously, after next week, we're going to probably start diving into right before the season starts because we'll be after next week. We'll have Labor Day weekend, all the drafts, and then fantasy season will start. So we might even start talking an early waiver pod after next week. But we're going to talk about that, and I'll kind of preview that on one of the pods next week. But that's enough about that. We're going to go ahead and jump into the latest injury news and updates. There are so many injuries going on right now and updates. Honestly, I was working on them earlier today, and I ran out of time. Life hits you, and you just run out of time doing stuff. I worked on injuries for a good while, and I didn't even get through but about 2/3 of what I wanted to cover. So I'm going to finish up what I got, and then we're going to kind of just wing it toward the end, and I'm going to breeze through some guys that might not be as highly drafted or as high ADP, but still people that will be drafted in your leagues that you might want to know if they're injured or what's going on with them coming up on your draft. And we're kind of going through ESPN, Fantasy Pros, and Sleepers websites just to try to get you the best news and just a conglomeration of all the updates and news for you here on one podcast. But that's going to take me into the highest ADP guy right now. Injury update, which is good news. That's Cooper Kupp for the Los Angeles Rams. He's on track to return for week 1. He returned to practice earlier this week. They've been giving him every other day off just to keep him fresh, reduce his chance of re-injury. Draft him. Don't worry about it. He's going to be back for week 1. Obviously, he's got injury history and concerns, but if he stays healthy, we're talking, a top 5 fantasy player easy at the end of the year. So don't be afraid if he falls late in the first round and you can get him at that turn and pair him with another stud. Man, that's the best thing. I was talking to a guy earlier today saying dream draft for me is drafting around pick 7, getting Cooper Kupp around 6 or 7, and then on the turn coming back and getting Amon-Ra St. Brown or Chris Olave or maybe a Garrett Wilson. I'm still not completely sold he's going to break out like Devontae did with Aaron Rodgers, but the more I hear about him, the more good things I feel. Or pairing him with a Diggs, something like that if he falls that far. Those guys, if you can come out of the draft with 2 studs like that at the end of the first, beginning of the second, go for it. I think that's going to be a winning combination this year. But moving on, next guy I want to talk about, Mark Andrews, undisclosed. He missed practice on Wednesday yesterday. As we're recording this on Thursday evening, missed practice on Wednesday. No specifics on his injury. It just says undisclosed. I couldn't find anything on any website. Harbaugh said it's nothing serious. If it is just something, he said it's just something we're working through. Whatever that means. At least he's not like Pete Carroll and he's like, oh, yeah, he's doing great. He'll be back in 3 months, but don't worry about it. Or something crazy like that. But I doubt he plays in the final preseason game, so don't look for him to be out there. If it does end up developing into something significant, definitely be ready to pick up Isaiah Likely. Because we've seen when Mark Andrews goes down, Isaiah Likely came in and filled his shoes very nicely and was extremely productive in fantasy. Easily a top 10, if not top 5 or 6 play at the tight end position when Mark Andrews out. Isaiah Likely fills that role nicely. And honestly, he's somebody you definitely probably want to target in dynasty drafts just for the sheer fact that if Andrews ever does get traded or eventually, something happens where they let him go, Isaiah Likely is going to be money. But anyway, enough about Mark Andrews and the Titans. And the Ravens tight ends. Rolling on to one of the big headliners. It's going to be Jonathan Taylor. Ankle, back, trade request. What problems aren't there going on right here? But here we go. If this doesn't bring back Le'Veon Bell vibes, I don't know what does. I mean, if any of y'all listening are old enough to remember the Le'Veon Bell saga with the Steelers and Bell holding out, I mean, a lot of analysts are like, oh, he's going to come back. He's going to come back. He's not going to sit out. He sat out all year. And anyway, it's crazy. And that, I don't know. I don't know if that's this type of situation, but I do, because I do feel like the Colts are trying to trade him, and that's what the newest news. Also, the back injury that Jonathan Taylor had, quote unquote, back injury. Yeah, it seems to magically disappear. Thank goodness. Because we know that was made up anyway. But neither here nor there. Taylor has returned to Colts camp since, but still on the active pup list, which means he's not participating, but he has to be activated before August 29th. Otherwise, he's going to end up having to miss 4 games. So, as we stated on previous podcasts, the Colts have given him permission to seek a trade with other teams, but they placed a deadline on him seeking trades of August 29th, because at that point, they're going to have to decide if they activate him off the pup list, or if he stays on the injured pup or the reserve pup list. He has to miss 4 games, and that ends up hurting them, because I think they have to pay him for those 4 games that he does not miss. So I think that's the question. I'm not 100% on that. If somebody knows the answer, reach out or let me know. I didn't get a chance to research that because I was trying to get as much injury news as possible. But yeah, so August 29th, if you can hold your draft till August 29th afterward and find out what the deal is with Jonathan Taylor, that would be the best thing. Because if he does not get traded by August 29th, I mean, then we're talking about he could hold out or something like that. They put him on the pup list. He at least misses the first 4 games. Then your value of him goes way down. I mean, look how far, Alvin Kamara's fallen. He's just getting suspended for 3 games and he's healthy. So, and he's not not in a big turmoil with his team currently. And he's way down there in like 6th, 7th, 8th round now. I mean, some drafts is crazy. But anyway, so find out next Tuesday if he gets traded or not. Good thing is, there's a lot of speculation. There's 6 teams interested in a trade already. There's 2 that have submitted trade offers already. There's been no specifics listed or anything like that yet, but there's several analysts and beat writers that say there's such bad blood between Colts and Taylor that if he doesn't get traded, there's a good chance that he doesn't play. I don't know about that, but whatever it is, if he doesn't get traded before August 29th, I'm out for sure. So if you've already drafted him, hope for a trade. If you haven't drafted and you want to really roll the dice on his value right now, you can. But like we talked about before, wherever he gets traded to, he's still not probably going to be that bell cow back, unless it may be in Miami, because Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert are so injury prone, and Devin Achane's already injured. So as far as that goes, his ADP on ESPN right now is about 28, and it's around 20 on Sleeper. Either way, I mean, you're talking, 20, you're talking into the 2nd, beginning of the 3rd, 28, you're talking into the 3rd, beginning of the 4th. Yeah, man, to have a guy and then him sit out if you draft him that high, which, I mean, it happens every year. People get injured, so that could happen. But I just don't want to take that gamble that high in a draft, especially on a running back. But that's enough about Taylor. That's what's going on right now. Be listening as updates come out. We'll update you on the pods in the future. So if you're listening to the pods going forward, we will let you know if anything changes with Jonathan Taylor, especially early next week. Next guy I want to talk about, Mon-Ra St. Brown. All right, we talked a little bit about him on the last injury pod. Went down with it said lower leg injury, but an ankle injury. Sat out practice a little bit. He sat out the last preseason game. It's reported that the team expects him to fully return to practice next week. Sounds like they're just giving him plenty of time to heal up. Like if he needed to go, he could. Old Dan Campbell elaborates beautifully on his recovery, like many other coaches always do. He's doing good, quote unquote. Dan Campbell, he's doing good. All right, great. Thanks, Dan Campbell, for letting us know how he's really doing. But anyway, I think this is just them being cautious. I draft him with full confidence. He'll be back. it was a lower ankle sprain, not a high ankle sprain. If it would have been a high ankle sprain, they would have come out and said something about that. Anyway, but yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'd still draft him full confidence. He'll be good to go. Him and Jared Goff got plenty of. He's not, it's not a new offense. It's not a new quarterback. They got plenty of chemistry. I would not worry about him one bit. Moving on to somebody I would worry about a little bit, Jalen Waddle, abdomen injury. It was listed as like a midsection injury is what the Dolphins coach had said earlier. But Waddle left practice around August 11th with an abdomen injury, correct? And has not practiced at all since. Wes Welker, didn't know this, but Wes Welker's the Dolphins wide receiver coach. Quite interesting, because that's pretty cool. Him coaching Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, I think that's pretty big. As successful as Wes Welker was in the NFL, but anyway, he commented and said the situation is not ideal. Now, he was referring to him missing so much practice time currently, but he said the team said he was still optimistic to be back for week 1. Now, optimistic to be back for week 1 and planning or, another way to word that, just optimistic does not sound too optimistic to me, but especially since he hasn't practiced at all. And he was seen at practice today, didn't have any pads on, and it was a padded practice, and is not expected to play in their last preseason game. The best part about it, he was on the sideline and not indoors getting treatment or anything, so he was involved in the game planning and the whole scheme of the offense and everything, so he was out there around it. That's good. But they didn't comment on any level of activity he had during practice, like if he went through drills or anything like that, which alludes to me being like that just alludes to me that there was no activity for him. Because if there would have been some, they would release some kind of optimistic, activity, I would think. But I mean, who knows? This is all speculation on my point. But the whole situation makes me nervous. For one, your abdomen is your core. And we've all heard about core injuries or abdomen injuries, they're the same area. They're very fickle with wide receivers who have to use a lot of their abdomen or their core in turning, cutting, jumping, and catching the ball. I mean, we have easily seen players miss 3 to 4 weeks minimum for a mild abdomen strain. And this injury, he's not even 2 weeks out yet. We still got a couple days before he's exactly 2 weeks. I love the player. I love the situation. I just would be weary about drafting him so early. He might not be ready or be very limited in week 1 if he comes back. And maybe even if he didn't come back till week 2, he could still be limited. So they don't want to rush him back. I think if they don't have to, they play without him. If it's still nagging and he doesn't get any practice in, but they definitely don't want to re-aggravate it, increase the severity of injury, and then he'd be out like half the season. Or even have to have surgery. This core injuries or abdomen injuries are one of those things they players have to have surgery for them occasionally. So I'd draft with caution because he is high up there. He's like end of the second round, beginning of the third round wide receiver, and that's a big roll of the dice on somebody if this injury is more serious. They're leading on and they're just trying to give him time to heal, and it doesn't get better, and then they end up putting him on the PUP list, and he for sure misses 4 games. So because if they do that, they can add another person to their roster. That was another thing about Jonathan Taylor is when they have roster cuts on the 29th, if they have to activate him, that's one less person they can have on the roster. But if they put him on the PUP list, they can have somebody else on the roster, which they'll probably do, but he'll be required to miss the first 4 games. Anyway, same situation with Waddle, just in case. Just kind of be on the lookout for that, and we'll be updating you as that goes along. Moving on, next player I want to talk about, Joe Burrow, right calf strain. Coach Zach Taylor stated Monday in the press conference, just as many other coaches do so optimistically, he looks great, quote unquote. All right, great. Thanks, Zach Taylor. He looks great. Zach Taylor went on to state he physically just walking around, he looks probably as good as he's ever looked at this point. That's a positive, and we will just go from there. All right, so he looks good walking around. and he wasn't looking good walking around before. That sounds terrible. So that's the positive we're taking here is he looks good walking around. That kind of makes me nervous a little bit, but it is good to hear because there was a beat writer that said that he was spotted running and throwing prior to the last preseason game this past weekend. So he should be on track to return for week 1, but it just cracks me up that Zach Taylor's like, he looks good walking around, so we're on the right track. Okay. Anyway, so I just thought that was kind of funny. Moving on. And we're going to monitor the situation. They're not going to rush him back, but he should be ready to go for week 1. Let's just hope he doesn't re-injure it, once he does come back. But we'll keep you up to date if there is anything that happens on that. Next guy, Garrett Wilson. A lot of people's big-time breakout wide receiver, a lot of analysts, a lot of guys on the Dirty Boot Sports, especially Kyle, is a big fan of Garrett Wilson, dealing with a low ankle sprain right now. He no longer has an injury designation, but he did not play in the preseason game, and there hasn't been any injury updates on him since the preseason game because he was held out for that low ankle sprain. So yeah, the fact that like on all the websites there's no injury designation and no news, I'd assume he's past this. He's probably back at practice. I would draft him, no problem. I wouldn't worry about it one bit, but I just want to let people know just in case they heard something about it. Next guy, TJ Hawkinson for Minnesota. Lower back stiffness, missed practice Wednesday, and is not expected to play in the upcoming preseason game this weekend. The coach come out and said, they don't think it's going to be a serious injury, but nobody placed any timetables on his return to practice. I'd keep an eye on it. If you're planning to draft him or did draft him, just kind of watch that to see when he does come back. Make sure, he'll be good for week 1, even if he doesn't practice anymore. But I would keep an eye on it also. He's also in contract disputes right now, but they're not heated or anything. They're just trying to come to terms for an extension. Rumor is that he wants like a record-breaking extension for tight ends, which is kind of crazy because he's not quite that level to me yet. I mean, it's not like he's been done an Andrews or a Kelsey season or a Darren Waller season yet. So I'm kind of curious of how he wants a record-breaking contract, but that's what the rumor is. But there's also there's no Pete Wright or anybody saying that it's gotten to the level of where it's heated. I think it's one of those things they're trying to get it done before the season. If it doesn't happen, then they'll work on it after. So, but just to keep an eye on that, TJ Hawkinson, lower back stiffness. We'll update you as it comes along. Next guy, been on this injury report so many times I can't even count. George Kittle has a groin injury. Here we go again. This guy never seems to stay healthy. I had that listed in my notes. It's so true. But he was back at practice today. Not a full practice, but he was participating, so that's good. That probably means that they're just taking it precautionary with him. He's not expected to play in the upcoming preseason game. He will probably focus on being healthy for week 1 instead of playing, which is the main thing. The fact that he was at practice, that just tells me that he will be there for week 1. They're just taking it easy to be precautionary. As long as he doesn't re-aggravate it or anything like that, then he should be fine. But the fact that he does already have a soft tissue injury this early, and he has a long-standing soft tissue injury history, does make me want to stay away a little bit more, even after I was already kind of staying away because he has questionable quarterback play. Because Trey Lance is now the number 3 quarterback. They have come out and said Sam Darnold's the number 2, and Brock Purdy's the number 1. So that kind of makes me a little bit nervous, but we'll just have to see how that plays out. Excuse me. Moving on, next guy, Breece Hall. Everybody wants to know about this guy, obviously, because he's going so high. But Breece Hall's recovering from it. He's doing well in his ACL recovery. He logged a practice today with 11-on-11 padless practice. So, very minimal contact. They said he looked great agility-wise, not expected to play in the final preseason game, but he looks like he has a really good chance to be ready for week 1 just based off practice today. So that's great news. You've got Breece Hall. Dalvin Cook, I put him right here, even though he's not as high in the ADP. But since they're, kind of cohorts and a 1A, 1B situation, Cook's not expected to play in the final preseason game either, as he's still recovering from his shoulder surgery in the offseason. As far as I know, he's been a full go in practice, but they're still taking it easy on him, and they're expecting both of them to split carries when they first come back. I would imagine both of them splitting carries is also going to kind of give them both a little bit lighter of a load, and then this could be a situation where they go with a hot hand in the game. Dalvin Cook breaks a couple off. He's looking really good. Breece Hall's not on a couple possessions. Then we start seeing Dalvin Cook, every 2 to 3 possessions, and then Breece Hall works into one possession here and there, and vice versa if it goes the other way. So who knows what this is going to be like, but right now, neither one of the backs is going to dominate a majority of the carries. So we'll just have to keep an eye out for them and their injury recoveries and make sure that neither one of them, has a major setback. Rolling on, Jerry Jeudy. This one's pretty rough. Man, we've had a lot of wide receivers go down here lately. Top end ones, between Jeudy, Wilson, which is back, but Amon-Ra, Waddle, Cooper Kupp. But Judy's one of the latest casualties. Some people probably hadn't even heard, but he limped off the practice field today with assistance, but was carted to the locker room from the sideline during practice. This was earlier today. They've already got him scheduled for an MRI, but it was reported, one of the beat writers said that they seen him when he was getting on the cart, that he was visibly upset. And sometimes when you see a player do that, it's kind of telling that he knows it's probably something serious, and he's upset because of all the hard work and everything he's put in, and he's not going to be able to be out there. But obviously, he's going to miss the last preseason game with this just happening right before the weekend. There's no way in the world they're going to put him back out there. But this does give me pause that he might miss week 1, being this close. We're sitting here about 2 weeks away from week 1 now. And if this is kind of a major hamstring or even really a mild hamstring strain, that's sometimes a 2 to 3 week injury before they start doing activity. So we'll just have to see where it goes. But if it is fairly severe, then he definitely be in danger of missing week 1. He was seeming like a value in drafts and a possible breakout at wide receiver. That really seems to be fading now with that injury right here, right before. I will say, if he does fall far enough, I will take him. Because he was looking to be the lead wide receiver on this team and take a step ahead of Courtland Sutton. And they said that Sean Payton was featuring him like he was the man. He was the wide receiver 1 in the offense. So I will take a chance on him if he falls far enough. But just know there's a chance that he misses. Just know there's a chance that he does miss week 1 with this injury being this late. But I would be looking to Courtland Sutton, Marvin Mims Jr., and Callaway to get a boost in the offense for this, because that means they're all going to get a little bit more work. Could be Callaway because Mims is more of a slot receiver, and Callaway is more of an out wide receiver. So Callaway could be the one that's in 2 wide receiver sets, and Mims coming in a lot more on the slots. But I'd monitor the situation just to see what the MRI says, and I'd be cautious if you're drafting him before the next week or so, because we will update you on the situation before the season starts. Next guy I want to talk about, Kenneth Walker. Had that groin injury, Pete Carroll, Dr. Coach Pete Carroll. Lord, you never know with him, but good news, Kenneth Walker participated fully at practice today and seems to have put the groin injury behind him. Full practice, ready to go. There are reports that they don't know if he's going to play in the next preseason game. If it were me, I wouldn't, but who knows with Dr. Coach Pete Carroll, Either way, he participated fully, which is great news. And while I'm sitting here, I'm going to go ahead and update you on his teammate, Charbonnet. I believe he is back in full. He was one that I didn't quite get to, but 1 second. There it is. All right, so yeah, Charbonnet. Oh yeah, that's right. As most of you know, if you're watching the preseason, he played in the last preseason game. So Charbonnet's back, and so is Kenneth Walker, which some of us were kind of worried about, but not anything to be worried about now. So Charbonnet's back, Walker's back. Walker seems to be the man in this offense, so don't be afraid to fire him up and draft him. Moving on, J.K. Dobbins was listed with an undisclosed injury and on the pup list. He's back at practice. He's had conversations with the GM, and it says good, I guess, good conversations about a possible extension and a contract negotiation. And he states he feels amazing now. So I'd still draft with caution with his injury history and the contract history kind of being in flux. He, I mean, he averages like 5 point something. I think it's 5.2 yards a carry, which is like college statistics. So the man is a talented, gifted runner. But you also got to take into consideration this year, the Ravens have been very outspoken about how they want to throw the ball more than they ever have. And if they do, with the stable of running backs, they always seem to be rotating in and out. How much is that going to take away from J.K. Dobbins' opportunities? So especially if they're thinking about not signing him that extension, and they're just like, we'll play him some, but we're not gonna, take a chance on him getting hurt. They might try to trade him. Who knows? But I'd be cautious with this one. He's somebody that I'm kind of staying away in drafts. There's a lot of better running backs with a lot of that are just number one bell cow running backs that are going around his range, and he's just not that kind of role. And he really doesn't catch a lot of passes either. So because Lamar doesn't really throw to the running backs as much, so I would stay away from this. But either way, he's back at practice. They didn't say anything about him being activated off the pup list, but if he's practicing, they're going to activate him off the pup list so he doesn't miss 4 games. Next, I want to go into the Kyle Pitts MCL injury. And he is one that we've been trying to get more information on because let's see if they've updated it. Yeah, he's back. He's back. Returns from his knee issue. He played in the first offensive possession in their last preseason game. So he's back. No problems anymore with that. Don't have to worry about Kyle Pitts anymore. Should be good to go for week 1. Fire him up, draft him. Because I know a lot of people were out there just kind of wondering if you should draft him or not. I think he's a high ceiling player with a fairly low floor depending on his playing time and his quarterback play. But he's not injured. His past his injury, played in preseason, good to go. Draft him. Don't worry about him until we talk about him again if he gets hurt. Moving on to Alexander Madison. Really, honestly, not a lot to update on Alexander Madison, which is kind of crazy. But currently, he's at practice in full. But ever since he had that injury kind of 21 days ago, they said something about him limping at practice, and there really has not been an update since. So, really not a lot to update there on Alexander Madison other than the fact that he was back at practice the next day. So, I would say don't worry about him. I'll keep him on this list so we can update just in case there is something that pops up. But other than that, don't worry about him. Next guy I want to talk about is a pretty big one. I hate to see this because he's a really talented wide receiver, but it's another wide receiver going down with an injury, and it kind of plays right into my bust category. But Terry McLaurin goes down with a toe injury during the last preseason game, and he was day-to-day. They had feared that it was a turf toe injury, which would have been big because turf toe injuries sometimes, wide receivers won't recover without surgery from them. But MR revealed it was not a turf toe injury, just a sprain, which can, I don't even think, let's see, did it say what grade strain? It just says a mild strain of his toe, so that's good. He has a good chance to suit up. It's reported he has a good chance to suit up for Week 1 against the Cardinals, um, but that's going to be 20 days after the initial injury. So as long as he stays off of it, continues to rehab, and doesn't re-aggravate it, um, there should be a decent chance that he is available for Week 1. But if not, obviously Jahan Dotson, the man, and Curtis Samuel's going to get a big boost as well, and De'Ami Brown, who's the other guy. I guess he's like wide receiver 4 there, but keep an eye on this. He's going to be limited and absent of practice for at least the next week or so while they're trying to kind of rehab him. But we'll keep you up to date on Terry McLaurin as we come a little bit closer. But hopefully, he doesn't miss that much time. That's not why I picked him for a bust, was injury. But it's obviously not going to help his case if he's not out there playing. Next guy we'll talk about, Miles Sanders, come up with a groin injury. He said Tuesday he's absolutely going to be available. This could be one of those things where he might have just tweaked it or stretched it just a little bit in practice. And, they're just watching out for him, trying to make sure that, because he was out of the last preseason game for this injury. He's not going to play the last preseason game, but he was in full pads at practice, in full on Monday. And he said he'll be out there Week 1. I believe him. If he's already in full pads at practice, they're just going to sit him out preseason just as a precaution. And that's Miles Sanders. Alvin Kamara, everybody knows he's suspended, should be back healthy. He doesn't have any injury designation, but just remember he's going to miss the first 3 games. Moving on to Pacheco. Now, Pacheco still trying to come back from this shoulder injury. He was present at Monday's practice, but he had on a red jersey. He was in a red jersey, which is not a non-contact. It's a contact jersey for the Chiefs for the first time since training camp, and that was on this past Monday. So 3 days ago, he just gets back to practice. Andy Reid said there's a chance that he suits up for the preseason debut. If it was me and I had him, or if I was going to draft him, I want to see him in the preseason debut if I think he's going to be the man Week 1. If he doesn't suit up, I don't know if he has enough time to get back to full 100% before Week 1 and be the man. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that. But that's Isaiah Pacheco. Moving on. Let's see. I believe the next guy I had from last week was Javonte Williams, who did return to practice. Hang on, he doesn't have an injury designation anymore, so I'm trying to get it load. There he is right there. Yeah, so he could begin the season on a pitch count. This is as of 6 hours ago, per Sleeper's website. Says offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi indicated that running back Javonte Williams' early season load could be limited before it starts to expand. That's why we said Samaje Perine, people. Anyway, Williams is coming off ACL tear into the season. He opened the camp off the field. Williams begun to ease back into things. He sat out the first preseason game. He played in the Broncos' second preseason game, which is why he doesn't have an injury designation anymore. He had 3 carries, 5 targets, 30 yards. But it seems he's still not a full go to begin the season. And he won't take over the team's bell cow back. So running back Perine should be the Broncos' top option outside of Williams early on. And honestly, if Perine rocks it out early on, I don't know if Williams overtakes that position. I think it's going to be a 1A, 1B at best for Williams. So that's one to keep an eye on, but his injury designation is gone, but he will be limited. So if you're drafting him, keep that in mind. And, hey, think about going for Perine late in drafts. I know I would, especially with that information right there for sure. Moving on. Let's see, next guy. I got Dalton Schultz on the list, who I had on the last one. I believe he is back and healthy. Let me verify that. Yep. Played in the last preseason game, which means obviously he's over the rib injury he had, so nothing to worry about there. Draft him, fire him up as usual. Next guy I got on the list is Kadarius Toney. Lord knows he ain't back because he just had him meniscus repair not too long ago. I'm going to talk about him, then I'm going to talk about another big one after him. But Kadarius Toney still dealing with his knee injury. This is about a week ago. It says, he still got, let's see, they didn't even give a time for return. Bear with me here. This is toward the end of my injury report that I didn't get to. I'm sorry, guys. All right, let's see. Remained absent from practice. This is as of last Wednesday. Remained absent from practice. General Manager Brett Veach previously said last week that he felt good about the chance of him being ready for the Chiefs' September 7th season opener versus the Lions. But he noted Wednesday that the team isn't inclined to hurry the wideout up until he's 100%. So at this stage, like they're saying right here on ESPN, it looks very unlikely that he plays in any of the preseason games. But I'll be honest, I don't think he plays in week one. That's just me. But guy that I do really want to talk about here, that a lot of people are super high on, that just had wrist surgery, unfortunately, and that is Jackson Smith and Jigba. A lot of people had him high chance to be the rookie MVP this year. Well, unfortunately, during their last preseason, I think it was preseason. Let's see. Yeah, I think it was during his last preseason game. Come down with an injury, hurt his wrist, and they were watching it for the first, I think, couple days, and it was, Dr. Coach Pete Carroll come out and said it was a slight fracture. Well, last time I checked, a fracture is a fracture, no matter if it's, a small fracture or a large fracture. And he's over here, it's a slight fracture. So I don't know what's up with that, but either way, he ended up having surgery on his wrist, and he's going to miss at least 3 to 4 weeks. I'm going to get you the actual report here in just a second. Give me 1 second. There it is. If it'll open. All right, so he underwent wrist surgery Thursday, today, and he remains without a clear timetable for return. Dr. Coach Pete Carroll said the surgery went great because he's a surgeon. But he didn't put a timetable on Smith and Jigba's return to the field. With season just over 2 weeks away, it's difficult to envision him being ready for week one. Of course not. But we should expect to see him debut sometime in the first month. So there you go. Like I said, 3 to 4 weeks. 4 weeks would be missing the first 2 weeks of the season. Originally, Coach Pete Carroll said Smith and Jigba had a slight fracture in his wrist, and they were slated to see a specialist. So obviously, the specialist was like, "We got to repair that." So if you drafted him, just be patient because he could be special when he comes back. But he's going to fall big time in drafts, and this could be a big value for people in dynasty and keeper drafts. I'm going to be looking to scoop him up in any of my dynasty drafts, and in my keeper draft, if he falls, man, I'm drafting him because he's a special player. I was not high on him being the MVP just because he has Metcalf and Lockett in front of him. But if something were to happen to either one of them, we're talking about could be a league winner for you there in that offense. So we're going to keep on going to our other players here. And let's see who else we got next. Let's see, Zach Ertz. He's one that I had on here, which he's fallen so far. He's not even on there, but I know he returned. He was activated and cleared for football activities. So he has not returned to practice, but he started doing football activities, which is huge, huge. But he has not returned to practice for Arizona. Keep an eye on that. But remember, they got Trey McBride there also. So it would not shock me if for some reason they decided to trade Zach Ertz for another piece or either a draft pick, because they're kind of in a rebuilding season right now. But yeah, Zach Ertz back doing football activities. Another guy that I had on the list was Marquise Brown to talk about. He had an undisclosed injury way back. He's back practicing in full, played in the last preseason game, I believe, and nothing to worry about with him. I'm going to double check that for you real quick, but I know he does not have an injury designation anymore. Man, ESPN's website has been super slow. Yeah, so he played the preseason game, caught 1 or 2 targets. It was an undisclosed injury still, but if he's back out there playing the preseason, there ain't nothing to worry about with him. So he's back. Kyler Murray. Let's see where Kyler Murray's at. I know where he's at. He's playing Call of Duty somewhere, not worried about the NFL at all. But still on the PUP list. There has been no updates. The most recent was 25 days ago when he didn't sound so optimistic about coming back. Shocker there, because he's playing all the Call of Duty he can, just spending all the Cardinals' money that they signed him to, unfortunately. But anyway, he's fallen so far right now. I mean, shoot, you almost could draft him for free. And I'll be honest, man, I mean, he puts up fantasy points when he gets to play. So he's somebody, last round, last pick in the draft, Hail Mary if you're in a dynasty or keeper league. So don't be afraid to kind of take a chance on him way down there. And if not, just cut him, because he's not being drafted. Like I said, let me see where his ADP's fallen to. ADP down to 168. I mean, you're talking almost the end of the draft. But like I said, the most recent update was July 26th. So he could be somebody they end up trading because he might just want to get traded. Who knows? But that's Kyler Murray. Let's see. What's some other? We've about covered all the guys that I really want to cover. Main thing I wanted to get to at least Jackson Smith and Jigba, who had that wrist surgery. Treylon Burks, he was another one that second-year wide receiver, really expected to break out for the High Titans. And I'll be honest, I still expect him. He injured his LCL in practice, went down, had to be carted off. Didn't require surgery or anything like that, but he is slated to miss a couple weeks at least, as he couldn't even place any weight on his leg when he left, had to get carted off. This is as of last week. No recent update, but he's obviously not going to play any preseason games. But they play New Orleans in week 1. This could allow, with it being last week it happened, this week he's still got 2 more weeks, so that's a total of 3 weeks to recover. Hopefully he can make it back because he's somebody that I think I think he'll be better than DeAndre Hopkins in that offense. I'll just say it right now. That's a hot take, as they like to say, but I think it's the truth. Last year their offense was terrible, and he still produced when he was on the field, and he only played like 60% of the plays, and he was like 5 for 50 every game, which is impressive in itself. So keep an eye out for Treylon Burks, and we'll be updating when he comes back. Rashad Bateman's another one I had down listed here from the last one. Obviously, he's back because he played in the most recent preseason game, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check that here. Yeah. Yeah, Rashad Bateman come out and said he's 99% healthy heading into the season. He's returning from a Liz Frank injury, which is a big one for a wide receiver. It's in the foot, and it can cause a lot of problems with cutting and running and sprinting as your foot flexes. But he's second-year wide receiver. A lot of second-year wide receivers tend to break out, but he's on a loaded pass catching pass catching team with Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham, Mark Andrews. It's going to be a lot of competition. We'll see if he lives up to the hype that we thought he was going to live up to last year. So, but Bateman off the injury report, back at practice, 99%. We're not going to talk about him until he hurts himself again. So, let's see. And that pretty much concludes everybody I had on last injury report. A couple guys that are new to the injury report. Jeff Wilson, listed here with an undisclosed injury as of last weekend. Didn't play in the preseason. That's pretty much all it says, that he's, undisclosed injury, didn't play, and they haven't updated since. DJ Chark with Carolina is listed here. Frank Reich said that Wednesday, Chark's dealing with a hamstring injury. He's got a long history of hamstring injuries. He missed practice Wednesday. Until they have any more details, there's not any listed here on ESPN for the severity. Obviously, they're going to probably do an MRI and come out with something probably close to this weekend before the game. Terrence Marshall and Laviska Shenault are both also dealing with injuries. Terrence Marshall's got back injury. Chenault's got a concussion. So what does that do? Adam Thielen's your number one guy, and the rookie Mingo is your number two guy, Jonathan Mingo, second-round pick, somebody to be looked for. But honestly, Adam Thielen is almost free in drafts, and he's healthy going into the season. And right now, he's their number one wide receiver, and nobody's drafting him. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a world beater, but we have seen him produce as a PPR machine in the past. And I don't think there's any reason while he's healthy that he cannot do the same thing this year. So keep an eye out for Adam Thielen late in your drafts, especially with DJ Chark dealing with a hamstring injury. That's just going to be more volume for him. And I think really Bryce Young links up with Adam Thielen, and because Adam Thielen knows exactly what a young quarterback needs as long as he's been in the league. He is super experienced. Let me see what his ADP is right here. Yeah, ADP 146. Sweet mother. I mean, right at the end of the draft. No reason why he doesn't have the chance to put up a great season if he can stay healthy. That's a big if. But if he can, I mean, he could easily be a wide receiver 3. You could play him at your flex, no problem. Probably be a floor of like 5 catches for 50 yards every week. And some people in their flex, that's all you ask for, with a chance at a touchdown here and there. But anyway, moving on. Another guy, Alan Lazard. This is a big one because, this is somebody that we were kind of expecting to be taking, had a chance to take away some catches from Garrett Wilson because him and, Aaron Rodgers have that chemistry. But he missed practice today with an AC joint injury in his shoulder. He's expected to be fine for week 1, but his status for the preseason game, obviously he's not going to play. There ain't no way. It says it's uncertain, but come on now. If you got an injury this late in the week, you're not playing in the preseason game. That's just ridiculous. But also, Corey Davis retired. Wow, that's crazy. So with Lazard going down, Corey Davis retires. Now you just got Garrett Wilson, and then Mecole Hardman and Randall Cobb. Wow. So Garrett Wilson is looking more and more like the man. This reinforced, like I said earlier, I just keep finding more and more information to make me want to draft him early. But yeah, so Al Lazar goes down, Corey Davis retires, and now you got Mecole Hardman and Randall Cobb, which, Rodgers is not as familiar with Mecole Hardman. Randall Cobb he is, but Randall Cobb's about 93. I mean, he's out there with probably 3 knee braces on, so it's going to be feed Garrett Wilson time. They're probably wishing they wouldn't have got rid of Elijah Moore now. But, hey. And then last but not least, let's see. Here's the Zach Ertz update for y'all that I finally found it. Sorry. Let's see. Yeah, he's actually he's not going to play in the preseason, obviously. No surprise. But he was activated from the active PUP list, which means he's practicing in full. Or at least he's practicing mainly. But they're going to be aiming for him ready to go for week 1. So he could be a late, sneaky tight end pickup if you need a sneaky tight end pickup there late in the season. Another one, if you're interested as far as James Cook goes, Damian Harris is injured, has a knee injury already. Not in uniform ahead of the preseason game last week. He did return to practice Wednesday after missing some time for the knee, but then he didn't play in the preseason game. So I don't know what that means. They're probably just watching him, load management. But Damian Harris, keep an eye on that because, I mean, all the reports coming out are James Cook is going to be the man. So if Damian Harris, the only one that was probably going to take any carries away from him, is banged up, I mean, dude, James Harris in that offense is going to be a beast. And that's pretty much going to, I guess, one other one. This one's kind of big. Mike Gesicki for New England. You probably are like, why is this big? That's because New England has 2 tight ends on their depth chart right now, and that is Mike Gesicki and Hunter Henry, which is crazy because we all know how the New England Patriots love their tight ends, but currently on their depth chart, they have Mike Gesicki and Hunter Henry. And currently, Mike Gesicki is dealing with sorry, I had it pulled up. I switched screens. Shoulder injury. He returned to practice Tuesday with a non-contact jersey on, which means he ain't 100%. But he had a mild shoulder dislocation. And I can go ahead and tell you from experience, I've dislocated my shoulder many times. A mild shoulder dislocation, there ain't nothing mild about that. Like if you dislocated a little bit, you dislocated it. And no matter how much they try to play it down, non-contact injury. Now, one thing I can say is that it'll get better fast because it did for me. And I'd fully dislocated mine several times. And I could go out there and do stuff, a week later at full strength. But it gets easier to dislocate it and easier to dislocate it. And once you kind of open that box, you can't put a lid back on it until you have it surgically repaired. So now they have like braces and things they can do for him now to kind of prevent them from getting dislocated, which he could end up playing with. But as a pass catcher, I think that would be kind of hard. So if it's me, I'd really think about targeting Hunter Henry late in drafts now, big time. Just because he's probably fallen so far and he's the only one in a New England offense. And we know New England, uses their tight ends a fair amount. And if one of them's banged up and the other one's getting all the playing time, I mean, there's a good chance that could be a sneaky play at tight end. And then I'm going to round it out last but not least, one of the big up-and-coming rookies, Devin Achane, goes down with a shoulder injury. It says Coach Mike McDaniel said he avoided serious injury, but he's listed as week to week. Now, I don't know about y'all, but anytime somebody's listed week to week and not day to day, it seems like it's more serious than not. So I don't know what's going on with this. Clearly, his early season involvement, he was, really kind of breaking out and trying to take on a fairly decent role in this offense. And then now Mostert and Wilson are going to be taking it. Myles Gaskin's still there. Ahmed's still there. But if he can bounce back from this injury, he still might have a chance to make an impact. He's going late in drafts, honestly, with him being injured and having a chance to miss the first week or two. I think there's a good chance he doesn't even get drafted in most drafts. But keep an eye out there for him. If he comes back, he's somebody you might take a chance on in dynasty or keeper leagues. And that's going to pretty much round us out for our injury and news update pod. We appreciate everybody listening. Thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, download, and give us feedback and give us ratings on your podcast app. We love that. And we want to know what you want to hear more of, what you don't want to hear of. We appreciate everybody that listens. Thank you for everything, and keep chasing that trophy, and we'll come back at you next week.